Hey, what's going on, guys? Phil here. Welcome to the MechWarrior 5 Clans review. Now, I'm going to be talking broadly about the game and my experiences. I have played the entire campaign. The game came out last month, and it's given me time to sort of think about the experiences that I had. And overall, I'm not going to be going into each individual mission and talking about that and each individual cutscene. I'm just going to be talking more broadly about the game in general and sort of my thoughts on that. So let's go ahead and first off and dive right in. Okay, before we get into the MechWarrior 5 Clans review, I do want to talk about today's sponsor, and that is actually one of my Twitch sponsors, DOS Print House. The owner's name is Nick. He is out of Oregon. He's a small printing service that delivers high quality prints. Now, just for you guys to be able to see here, we've got a very large one. You can see all the little details here. This is a quite large, and then we also have something like a 3-inch print as well, and I'll go and zoom in here so you guys can sort of see. He also does tabletop, whatever skill you're looking for, whatever you're looking for. I'll have a link to his website down below, and you can check it out. Again, I love working with US-based businesses. He's out of Oregon. He's quick to respond. Also, you're able to contact him on the NGNG Discord in the 3D printing section that we have. Again, all you got to hop on there. It's super awesome to be able to interact. If you want to get a quote, just hit him up there. You can also go to his website. You can contact him. Just mention NGNG and you'll get a 10% discount, of course. But again, the big thing here is that he is a US-based small business. He's a great guy. I've actually known him for years in MWO, MechWarrior Online specifically. And we already have other NGNG members that have ordered copious amounts of things from him. So if you're looking for a huge army of battleships or mecha or whatever, he can provide that for you. So anyways, reach out to him, and just want to say thank you again to DOS Print House for sponsoring this video. And the first thing I want to talk about is the intro to the game. First off, let me just get this out of the way. This is by far the best MechWarrior narration and storyline game we've ever had, with actual actors and motion capture, and of course, the fidelity of Unreal 5 or just modern day sort of graphics. I mean, it's exceptional. We'll talk about the characters, of course, a little bit more in depth. Speaking of, you have 5 of them in front of you. And really, this is sort of I would say a love story, if you will, love letter to reading one of the novels, which is really cool. And on top of that, what's even better is if you grew up with this sort of like clans as I did, where you sort of idolize this sort of the culture, if you will, and then as you progress, some of that didn't really hold on, at least for me. And it's one of those things where it's interesting where the game takes you and what it lets you experience. That yeah, and I'm no spoilers here, but there will be spoilers if you stay for the entire review. So just sort of keep that in mind. If you don't want to know about anything, or if you just want to play the game, now's the time to go ahead and just turn this review off. If you've already played through, or if you don't mind spoilers, or if you're already a BattleTech fan and you know generally what happens as far as in the BattleTech universe, then of course stick around. So first things first, your introduction to the game is introducing you to your set of 5 characters, right? And that is actually done on them arriving onto planet. So let's go ahead and dive into that. And I'm going to sort of give you guys a little bit of backstory, because I feel like the game introduces you a lot to BattleTech lore and specifically clan language. But unfortunately, the game doesn't also have like a codex or encyclopedia or something that if you don't know what BattleTech is or MechWarrior in general, and they're saying some stuff, clans talk a little bit differently and weird, and that's for a reason. They actually do. They are a little bit different. So let's go ahead and dive in the first introduction to this game. Okay, so the introduction to MechWarrior 5 Clans first brings you into We Are Smoke Jaguar. And the cool thing about the game that I really like is there is an archives. When you get into the game, you can watch every single cutscene. And as you can see here, there's already a host of cutscenes. By the time you get out of like basically introductory missions, that sort of holds your hand and introduces you to the game. So off the bat, we have a lot. One of the pros that I love about this game is that there's over 90 minutes, 90 of storyline narration, motion capture, and scenes like this. By far the biggest production we've ever seen in a MechWarrior game. Yes, I get it for all those out there. We had some stuff in Mech 4 and Mech Commander, but we never had anything like this on this level. So again, I know when I did the podcast with Russ, he mentioned that, and we didn't really understand what he was talking about. When he talks about narration and story, he's mainly talking about these cutscenes, right? These cutscenes between the characters that are going to be introduced throughout. And the first one is, of course, we are Smoke Jaguar here. And I'll go ahead and just sort of watch it. I think it's very telling. These are lines from the Remembrance. And for those that are wondering, yes, this is a broadsword coming in. I love the music in the background, a lot of like throat singing, you know, Mongolian throat singing. I love it. I think it sets the vibe here. Absolutely fantastic.
We are Smoke Jaguar, strongest of the clan.
Their opinion, they're the strongest.
We are hunters who fight with the ferocity of our namesake to stand unequaled amongst the children of Korinsky.
This is where I wish I could pause here.
We remember the bravery of our ancestors who gave themselves to the void, and of the despots responsible for their exodus. Through our strength, we lead the Crusaders to see the Great Father's dream realized. His hidden hope to one day return and reclaim paradise. It is our sole purpose. Our divine right. We will bring vengeance down upon the tyrants that enslave humanity. And they shall tremble before our fight.
Okay, so the first thing you need to understand there is there's actually a lot of little details there. The Remembrance, if you will, is sort of like a quasi-religious historic document inside each clan. And for those that are wondering, you're playing Clan Smoke Jaguar, that is sort of famously known for reasons that I'll get into in a little bit. And what you're doing is you're hearing that sort of telling. Now, they talked about the father and Korinsky. For those that don't know, the clans were actually formed like 300 years prior. Just think of the inner sphere as being sort of like Terra in the middle, Earth, and humanity spread out through the stars, if you will, and then factions developed, right? And then you had basically infighting happen, and a general of the big armies, if you will, just said, hey, we're not going to participate. We're not going to see the destruction of, you know, our worlds, and basically just left the inner sphere. And fast forward 300 years, this is sort of that time frame. Now, during that 300 years, the army that left basically transformed. They actually got into their own sort of civil wars as they left, but they traveled a year after jump, these jump ships that you see, these big warships, they left. They're a year away, jumping 30 light years at a time. And we, you know, again, basically infighting, the clans were formed. They have a warrior caste system or a caste system. And then on top of that, they basically train to minimize loss. They train, it's almost like they gamified warfare, and they fight amongst themselves. And unfortunately, they take that sort of system when they come back. And he says, come back, the dream of our father. Well, one thing you need to understand about the Clan Smoke Jaguar that's not really told in this entire game is that Clan Smoke Jaguar is what's called Crusader Clan. And that basically is, you have two political factions, if you will. And that's Crusaders and that's Wardens. Crusaders believe it's sort of their destined right to go back to the inner sphere, purge the inner sphere, and basically bring back the old ways, this you know, old kingdom, if you will. And it's their divine right based on their father, Korinsky, this old general back in the day. And you can imagine over 300 years, it's like stories told of almost like a prophecy, if you will. And they believe it's their divine right and so forth. And basically every cadre and trainee and warrior before them also felt that they were the ones destined to go back to the inner sphere. Okay, so that sort of sets the mood. And for us BattleTech fans, what's really fantastic is we all know this. We also know what happens in the future, but what they did here, Piranha Games with Mech 5 Clans, is they took the broader picture, which is the clan invasion into the inner sphere, and then they smartly integrated you inside the story, but operating sort of on the outskirts. And that's sort of where you remain this entire campaign, is on the outskirts. You participate in stuff that is lore accurate, some of your first missions, and then throughout, again, mention Edo and Turtle Bay and Luthien, spoiler alert. all the stuff that participates, but what you're doing is you're operating on the outskirts. That allows them to be able to tell a story and not necessarily be ham-fisted in. Anyways, so that's your introduction, okay, is Clan Smoke Jaguar. I sort of predicted this way back in the day. I said you're going to start on Huntress, yeah, so that's basically it. Okay, so depiction of Huntress. Huntress is a jungle planet. It's actually got a multitude of biomes, if you will, but specifically a jungle. You talk about smoke jaguars. Literally, this is where the clans genetically create their caste, and it talks about that. We're gonna dive in here. For those that also understand, is the clans are a caste system that uses eugenics, if you will, advanced eugenics, to basically take the best, if you will, the warriors, let's just say your top individual, and you earn the right, a blood name, to be able, and that comes up later, to be able to take your genes, and it enters a pool, and then those top genes are then, they create a new bloodline, and they create basically 100 to 200 cadets based off that. And so the next part of this is you're going to be introduced to the cadets from Lunderholm. Now you have to understand that there's 5 here. They started with 100 and they're down to 5. Also, you get introduced to Kit, the Kit commander here. And with that, he basically says is you're part of a failed batch. And what he's alluding to is the eugenics programs want to create top performers. And for whatever reason, through accidents, through injury, through death, they're down to 5 warriors. Now, what happens if a warrior washes out? It depends. If they don't get to the trial of position, which you go through at the end of the tutorial, they could go to a different caste. They could just be casteless. There's different castes. There's scientist, there's market, so forth and so on. Keep in mind, the Smoke Jaguars' highest caste system is warriors. They are extreme about it. They look down on the other castes. They're not exactly equal. Some of the other clans, not so much. Some of the other clans, again, they're equally, science and like a Smoke Jaguar or Diamond Shark and stuff. Some of their merchant castes and stuff. Anyways, long story short, this is where we get introduced to our 5 main characters here, and then of course Kit Commander. So let's go ahead and take a look at that, and I'll go ahead and comment while we're doing this. I think this is a really cool scene. It's very telling. They just landed on this dropship. This is a broadsword. For those that are wondering, this can carry 5 mechs and some vehicles. Full sufficient. It's a dropship though. It goes from space to ground and ground to space. It can't do jumping between stars.
Sure beats Lunderholm.
At least there were no actual smoke jaguars hunting you in those jungles.
No, I'm with Mia. I'd rather get torn apart by large cats than have to climb those damn Grey Mountain cliffs again.
Gravity is lighter on this planet. Although you might want to watch your language, Liam.
I haven't a clue.
It's talking about contractions.
Eyes up.
I'll get into that. Clans speak very weird. They don't use contractions like I am instead of I'm, stuff like that. It's a big deal.
At ease. I am Kit Commander Ibrahim Izmir. This is Stalker Base, your new home for the final stretch of your Simcoe training. Your cadre of the Elijah Hoyt and Abigail Izmael
Here's the blood names I was talking about earlier.
has suffered numerous fatalities and washouts throughout your time on Lunderholm. Kit's Ezra, Jaden, Liam, Mia, Nasir. You 5 are the final vestiges of your brood that some deem might one day be of value to the clan.
Out of 100, there's 5.
I am not one of them. To me, you 5 are the excrement of a failed, semi-aborted batch from my bloodhouse. Far from the pinnacle of humanity demanded by the clan's geneticists that spawned you.
He's from that bloodline. That's why he's very passionate about this.
I am a gracious host.
As you can see from his scars,
So I will give you
he's
the
been
opportunity
proven in battle.
to show me what those Stravics on Lunderholm taught you.
Stravags, it's sort of a derogatory
Show me what you know
term.
of being a real true-born mech warrior.
Trueborn being genetically bred. They call freeborn and free
Yourselves
births
worthy of the name
natural
and
births.
heritage you carry with you. Suit up. Prepare for mech combat.
But, sir, we just arrived.
I love this scene. Baby faced.
Did I ask you a question, kid? Real mech warriors should be combat ready the second they hit Atmo.
And yes, that is 100% lore accurate. It is the strong and not for the weak.
You Surats able to be prepped and ready in the next 15 mics? Queoff!
All right, another thing there. Queoff, what does that mean?
Get on it then.
That means question, and he's looking for an affirmative. They say af, which is affirmative, it's just short.
Dismissed.
Again, they despise like waste. They've
Commander.
taken this language
We will not
and
fail.
reduced it.
Very brave. Very stupid.
With that as well, it helps with battle comms to be able to say just af instead of affirmative. Shortens that
We'll
down.
catch up.
Notice he says I will catch up instead of I'll catch up. No contractions used by Jaden, but you heard earlier Liam speaking in contractions. They sort of reprimanded him about that. Giving you a look here of the scale of the mechs. Now keep in mind, Mech 5 Clans takes the same scale from Mercs and from MechWarrior Online as well as far as the physical scale. Mechs are, I would say, a lot bigger in these games than historically accurate in lore, significantly, if you will. And I do think that detracts a little bit, and we'll get into that later. But here's your introduction to the main characters in the game as far as, Kit Commander. As I mentioned before, the unique thing about here is you actually get a perspective. These are not warriors yet. They're 18 plus years old. Imagine the training program starts 3 to 5 years as far as old, and they've been in training this entire time. They're the most proficient, skilled, if you will, and the other aspect, they've survived this long, but you can't survive unless you have those attributes. Okay, they're smart, they're intelligent, they're eager. And these are the last 5. The rest either died or they've washed out. And so he keeps mentioning Kit. Until they've proven themselves in what's called a trial of position, a position amongst the clan, that's when they earn the title of warrior. And again, we'll sort of talk about that in a little bit. My sort of thoughts on this, I absolutely love Kit Commander. Again, it gives you a vibe of just like an old vet, just has been through the works. And keep in mind, clan technology could actually fix his face, could fix all those scars, could give him a new eye. His right eye is no longer working, right? They have the technology to be able to fix it, but it is honorable and sort of courageous, right? To keep your scars, right? And that's sort of a throwback to some of the stuff we saw in like World War II. But yeah, he keeps his scars. Obviously, you can sort of see it on his face every single time. So every single time someone looks at him, they know what he's been through, and it's sort of a you take pride in that, right? Again, every single 5 here is based off of his blood name, so there's genetically there's a lot of the same in this. All right, so moving on. What is Future World? I really love this scene, and you're gonna actually see a lot of this. I'm not gonna play it all the way through. And the scene is between Jaden and for me, what I really like about this is that you're starting to see the emotional connection between the crew. In the novels and even in, I would say, a lot of the games, clanners are just sort of depicted as, clan command and all that fun stuff. This is the first time I think you've actually seen them as humans, right? You've got personalities. Not everyone's going to agree with each other. Not everyone's going to agree with what the clan's doing. And then the internal relationships between these kids grew up together. They were competing against each other. And out of the 100, only 5 are left. And this scene is, like I said, one of many that I feel that PGI did a really good job with the storyline and with the sort of narration between the characters and sort of forming that relationship. Also giving, sometimes you'll see a little bit of foreshadowing in some of these scenes, and I think that's absolutely fantastic. And again, you can watch any of these in the archives. Now, this is absolutely fantastic. Let's go and talk about the trial of position. I felt actually a lot of like connection with this moment for a lot of military vets. You go through a series of, you get torn down at boot camp, and then your drill instructors build you back up. And I actually felt a little bit of kinship here because you build that relationship with your drill instructors at the end. They're wanting to see you succeed and sort of that fatherly sort of figure. And Kit Commander Israel is basically their daddy, if you will. He's there. He's going to put them to the task. He wants to see whether they'll fail or succeed. And for me, I actually really like this scene between the two. And he basically prepares him for his final test, if you will. Now, I have to talk about the trial in general. The trial of position is basically Jaden's way of entering the clan. And how the mission sort of starts is that you need at least 2 kills to be Star Commander. I actually haven't seen what happens if you die with only 1 kill. It's actually a good question. I don't know. But one of the things that I didn't like about the trial of position is if you defeat for the first 2, the Mad Dog at the very beginning and then the Hellbringer, unfortunately, the game goes into story mode and rips the controls out of your hands, and you no longer can go for the 3rd kill. This really disconnected me from, at the moment I was streaming this, which, by the way, I do stream Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. to 4 p.m., twitch.tv/NGNGTV. I'll have a link down below. This really threw me off, is I don't think it should have even been an option. I don't know what they should have done, either or. But it was really just like, oh, here's a shiny thing. Oh, never mind. And just sort of took that out of your hands. And I really didn't like that as an, as a note here. So it is what it is. Obviously, they can't retract it. I think they should have done it a little bit differently. I don't know how, but it really didn't feel right to me that they have the option for you to get 3 kills, if you will, or at least thinking. And then it just gets taken out. Also, the interaction, you didn't have, who's in the Timberwolf that destroys you. Why was it so quick? It's just one of those things that just sort of felt disjointed. So the trial itself, I actually liked. That was a problem. You got plenty of verticality with your, summoner to be able to hop around and fire. I do see where it could be primarily pretty difficult for someone that's new to the game and never played any MechWarrior game or recent MechWarrior game like Mercs or MechWarrior Online. But overall, I felt it was relatively easy to get 2 kills and move on. So maybe I actually do need to find out what happens if you only get 1 kill. I don't know. That's a weird one. I haven't really thought about that. But overall, I liked it except for the ending there. That really just sort of ripped me out of the experience. So that was like one of the first negatives I had with the game. It's a small one. You earn the rank of Star Commander, and following, you get introduced to one of my favorite characters in the game, and that is Galaxy Commander, Perez. Now, spoiler alert, I think it's one of the best characters in the game. I really feel that it is what you think of as far as a hardlined Crusader, Smoke Jaguar, MechWarrior, and in this case, Galaxy Commander. He is by the T. He is passionate, if you will. And in this game, you're going to have to make some choices. And I feel like, again, spoiler alert, I feel like this is one of the better characters in the game. You really get either you're going to love him, you're going to hate him, you're going to love, hate, and or respect him as well. But for me, this was one of the best characters. He also gives me a little bit of Val Kilmer vibes, and I think that's fantastic. I don't know if that was intended or not. Obviously, they do have a, PGI has on the Mech 5 Clans YouTube channel. You can watch the sort of actor behind him, sort of how he came up with the character. But this is fantastic. You get introduced. You're now going to stay together with your 4 other individuals, your Sibkin, if you will. That basically means your cadets that you were born with. And you get to keep 4. Obviously, we started with 5. It already ends with 4. I felt like it was very telling of the clans and their ways of, one of them dying in the trial, which is a live fire incident, and he didn't make it. And again, I sort of feel like that sort of sets the mood. Unfortunately, you don't really see anybody else die until later, and we'll get into that, if you will. But yeah, introduction. Obviously, the pinnacle here is the clans and the cons. Leo Showers basically utilizing not a false flag event really, but they sort of leave information out to the other clans about the inner sphere, and it's specifically Comstar, and the, if you will, the inbound light Comstar jump ship that's been trying to find the clans, or is trying to find Kerensky's ancestors, who just so happens to be the clans. Keep in mind, this isn't a false flag event, but basically what he does is he utilizes the event, right? The ship appears in their homeworld system. They find out the identity of the ship and the crew, and they use that as Crusaders. Again, Crusaders have been banging the war drums. They want to go back. They want to take over. They want to, cleanse the inner sphere and restore the Star League. They use this as an event to, if you will, it's like a false narrative. They're like, oh, well, they know where our homeworlds are. Unbeknownst to the rest of the clans, that inbound light just stumbled upon the, location of Huntress. It did not know anybody was there. So he goes up here and he basically, tells this big grandiose story about, the inner sphere now knows where we are. They're going to come here and bring their ways here. It is time to go back and purge, basically. That's what he's saying. And so it's like a mixture of not all information is given in a sort of false flag. It's unique, very thoughtful as far as like very well planned and executed. And this kicks off the invasion here. One thing I will say about this scene, which is really cool, is you do read about the clan council. Keep in mind, this is on Strana Mekti. This is basically like the clan homeworld, if you will, council area, right? Trials happen there between clans, they fight and stuff. But this is where like the council, the government happens. When clans have grievances and stuff, they come there, they vote. Now, one thing that's not really described here is the invasion starts, it sort of leapfrogs. The invasion doesn't start right away. The clans here, you can see all these banners. They actually have a trial. They bid amongst themselves. They war amongst themselves in a orderly fashion, and to see who receives the right as the first invaders, right? And clearly there is a winner here, and that is Jade Falcon, Clan Wolf, Ghost Bear, and Smoke Jaguar. Those are your 4 invading. They do have 2 clans in backup as well. One of those being the Nova Cats, which we get into, and you actually see them in this story as well. And really then the invasion begins. And I think this is a great representation of fleets and warships and jump ships and overall just sort of the setting and the mood. Okay. And now keep in mind, this is a restarted playthrough. This does not have the rest. And I'm going to go ahead and stop here as far as that. If you haven't played the game, and you don't want any spoilers, don't worry. I'm not going to like give out too much here. But I think this is a fantastic, you sort of can get an understanding. Each one of these Union class dropships can carry a trinary, if you will, which is, 15 plus mechs depending on the unit, plus support personnel, you name it, aerospace fighters, so forth and so on. These ships, some of them are built for actual combat. That's another big thing that happens, is because of events on a certain planet, the Smoke Jaguars sort of set the precedence for their own destruction years later on because of the atrocities they commit, specifically Galaxy Commander Perez. Again, spoiler alert there. Now, let me go ahead and talk about just sort of the game and the systems, because I feel like this is the real meat and potatoes. This is your gameplay loop. Before moving on though, let me go ahead and clarify. I think the story is absolutely fantastic. The narration is fantastic. The motion capture is fantastic. There was some audio issues, and again, there's been some hot fixes. But other than that, I think it's been great. And I was actually super impressed by the overall quality. And whatever DLCs we're going to see of this game, I'm looking forward to that level and maybe even a step up. First off the bean is here, one thing is you have your mission central. This is where you find missions, right? This is the very first mission. This is touchdown. Now, one thing I would love for them to do, and they do this in some of the missions, is to provide maybe a little bit more intel of what you're facing. Now, that may not be possible in every single battlefield, but there's hints sometimes on some missions like, hey, it's open, wide, area, use long range. I think there should be stuff like that sort of hinted at the player, so that way you don't drop in a long range setup on a close range fight. You as a player sort of keep in mind, if it looks like it's urban environment, it's probably going to be an urban environment, and you may want to go close range and sort of heavy. Now, since this video is coming out, they've already patched one of the big problems with one of the weapon systems, and that was missiles and ammo. Ammo has been like almost doubled, so you can take SRMs and feel a little bit better about that, and LRMs not run out of ammo. There are repair bays and there are ammo supply caches to be captured, but not on every single mission and not every single map, and you don't know where exactly those are going to happen until you've already played through them. So that's one thing that maybe in the future would be really great, is that they added maybe a little bit those out along the lines. And one of the developers did say in my chat that they're strategically placed based on their experiences where they think users are going to need them. So I think if that maybe was in player control, or that maybe you could call down and get an ammo resupply, or even a mobile field base, that would be really cool. But other than that, one of the things that I'd really love to see is that this right here, you're going to start hearing narration.
Star Commander Jaden, your star has the distinguished honor of inclusion in the Sakan's bid.
All right, let me go ahead and skip that. I love that it's being voice read. One of the things that I'd really love to see in a future DLC is actually this pan back out, and you see the interaction between the people around the table, this hologram table, and then pointing and interacting. You've got all this motion capture with the story and sort of narration. And then this just sort of seems out of place. I really wish, so future DLCs, it's a small little thing, but I really wish you could see the individuals interacting around the holographic table, pointing and stuff like that. I think that would be, that would add that level. But one thing I really like about this is you actually see where you're going. There could be a little bit more fidelity. I sometimes think this holographic isn't exactly the most, doesn't have the most fidelity. You don't know exactly, is that a building? Where's this route? And as you prepping for the mission here, we have 155 tons. You're going to have to go to the mech bay and make changes to your mech. And so if there was a little bit more information, obviously we have biome desert, but we don't necessarily know, like, hey, is this a close range fight, long range fight? Do you expect it to be quick or long? Stuff like that may give you a little bit more information to equip your mechs. So in general, the mission central here, I like it. I wish there was a little bit more interaction. Another thing too is you actually do get some planets where there's multiple choices here to pick from. Like you'll have like 2 missions available. It really doesn't matter which one you do first. You ultimately are going to go through every single mission. You're not going to have side missions. That's one thing that I feel like was missing from the game, was like side quests. That being said, why I think side quests would be nice, or side missions? For experience, you have barracks here, and you basically have pilot experience. Now, one thing that's not really talked about here is you can actually get some of this by this right here. I feel like this glow, this is a sim pod here. Okay, you can replay every single mission you've already done. I don't have one listed yet, but then there's advanced parameters where you can earn extra XP for your pilots. Okay, and XP comes in the form here, XP available, and then you can apply this. You also have some other things that pop up for mechs affinity. But you can actually go and do and earn XP for your pilots, albeit it's not super high. It gets higher as the difficulty in the campaign progresses. But another big thing is here, with these milestones, these advanced parameters, you can unlock and help unlock your mech XP, and that's a big one. So if we go back to facilities here and we go to science lab, you have chassis upgrades here. Okay, like let's click on the Viper here. You can see 250 mech XP for a level 1, right? You can hit certain milestones for certain bonuses here, like assault mech kills. You know, hey, just completing 5 of these milestones, you get 1,000 reward. Heavy mech kills, light mech kills 40. These are what add up in the sim pod that you can get, but it's not really talked about. So that, again, I just sort of want to point out the sim pod can be and should be huge. I really like this. I like that there's challenges after you get past the basically training missions. There's you know, lower weight, if you will. Don't lose any mechs. Don't lose any components and stuff like that. I actually think that was really well done. Now, there's training missions here. There's shooting range and combat arena. This is where I would like to see improvement. I think there should be other scenarios here. There's never other additions to this. And this is where I feel like could be either the use of, you know, with your AI lance mates, or on co-op, there could be some really fun creative modes here for your buddy, whether it's a horde mode, see how long you can last, through more maybe tactical games and scenarios here, and like to be able to you know, utilize like, hey, this is how you counter an ambush, or hey, this is how you plan on positioning your lance mates using the battle grid and excuse me, and better positions on the map. Stuff like that. This is a really unused, you know, aspect here. And this sort of goes back to Mercs, where I felt like co-op and sort of the customized missions and stuff like that could be really fun. And I hope in the future with any DLCs that they add to this, because again, the campaign missions start stacking up and there's advanced parameters there. You can replace every single mission. But under here, this is all this is, and there's really nothing. And I feel like that's a big opportunity to add value to the game and someone playing. And then on top of that, what I would say is if you're playing this game, utilize the sim pod. It's going to expand your gameplay length, if you will. I had around, I think, 40 hours into the game, and I think if I would have just went right through it, it could have been maybe in the 30 hours. This will definitely extend that, because again, you're playing the entire mission over. The other good thing too is with the sim pod, you can try different setups on your mech, and it's really not a big deal. You're not having to worry about repair cost or anything like that. So you can go in there and try stuff out. There's also a challenge for stock mechs, which I'm doing over on my Twitch channel, is doing a mission stock, and you can actually do that in here as far as the advanced parameters. Going back to, like I said, a little bit more info on here would be really nice, and that sort of falls down to knowing how to customize your mech. And let's go ahead and talk about facilities. Hey guys, Editor Phil here. One other thing that someone brought up, and quick shout out to Meta, is the reticle shake. If you notice on a lot of the ballistic weapons, speaking of Gauss rifle, you'll notice here if I fire, there's quite a bit of movement. And if you don't know, when you're moving and they're moving, that can be quite distracting. And one thing you can actually do is change that. And that's actually pretty easy. So go to options, scroll down all the way to camera shake intensity, and turn that to 0. Now you can turn this down if you want, if you actually like it. But I can tell you that the difference here is quite nice. There's no shake here. And from a gameplay perspective, and you go and be like, oh, well, lore. Well, guess what? Lore, even today in standard modern battle tanks, we have stabilization. The weapon itself and your arm would be taking the recoil and all the fun stuff. So for me, that can be really distracting. You throw on PPCs and getting shot at and recoil. It's just one less thing you have to worry about. So anyways, there you have it. That's how you can turn off a reticle shake if you hated it. I hope this helps you out. So let's get back to the video. All right, let's talk about the mech bay. Obviously, you have your first starting mechs. You have Mist Lynx, Arctic Cheetah, Viper, and Kit Fox. The biggest thing that I noticed with this is that there's actually no tutorial on how to utilize the mech bay. And I felt like this was probably going to be the biggest hurdle to anybody coming in from the game and didn't know what they were doing. And I would like to see some type of tutorial on how to customize, even swap omnipods. And again, this actually has a lot of depth compared to what you normally have with mercs, if you will, because of the Omnipod system. For those that are sort of unaware, the clan mechs, and especially the 16 mechs that are available to you to purchase, eventually you'll have 16 here. If you go to unlocks, you can sort of see where they unlock here. You have 16 chassis. These are what are called Omni-mechs. Omni-mechs, just think of them like the Apache helicopter, the Cobra, where you can quickly change out weapon systems and platforms, and that they're sort of modular, if you will. So, hey, we're going on a mission that's going to be a prolonged. You may not want, ammo-based weapons. Hey, it's going to be infighting. We need to hit hard, quick, and fast. Load up on ballistics, load up on missiles, short range, so forth and so on. That's the idea of Omni-mechs in general, is that, basically they're modular, basically left arm, right arm. There's different modular weapons and so forth. So the first thing is that you can customize your mech. And again, going back to one of the difficulties with MechWarrior games is that there's so much information here. If you don't know anything, if you didn't play MechWarrior Online, if you didn't play Mech 5 Mercs, I think a lot of these things are going to be a little bit alien to you. And unfortunately, like I said, I feel like it's sort of left on the table of not really explaining a few things here. Like if you go over, you'll be like, oh, okay, it's a medium mech. It's okay, the health, assigned text tonnage, like you get that. But some of the things may not be as obvious, like cooling. What does that mean? Heat capacity. What does necessarily that mean? DPS, max range, all that. But from an experience standpoint, it's like, oh, okay, and we go in here, and this is where I think the first issue I saw was, even as an experienced player in the IP, let's talk about the right torso here. You see number 2, you see some like a ballistic, if you will, and then number 2. That can be really confusing because go down to the left arm, I see 2, and then I see 1. Well, what does that mean? And this is where I would say the biggest holdup in the mech lab is, and if I click this, it basically means is there's 2 hard points here. I can have 2 weapons, but I only have 2 slots. That's what that means. And once you understand that system, it's like, okay, so that basically means I have 1 missile, but 2 slots. Now, where does that come into play? That comes into play when you start customizing and you go to, an LRM 15 here is 2 slots, right? And if we scroll over here, SRM 6 is 1, but an SRM 6 with Artemis is 2. So you could fit an SRM here. And this is where I think with a sort of simple tutorial, something to walk you through would be really, really helpful to the player. Also, to make sure they're utilizing, maximum tonnage here. This is different than MechWarrior Online. MechWarrior Online, if you'd actually be able to change the armor values here. You can't do that in this game. It's locked. Now, the one thing they did add to this game that I think is actually really cool is they added the ability to add armor. Actual armor, a full ton. We have half ton. We have quarter ton. This is actually fantastic. I actually really like this system, and I'd highly recommend on loading up armor on some of these missions. You're going to want extra armor. You can take a mech that, again, going back to base armor values here of armor 306, you could have this at 350. And again, depending on the mech, depending on the setup, you definitely want to do that depending on the mission. Now, because of the lack of information on the mech lab and how to customize, I do feel like potentially there are people out there that are going to play this game that are going to be under ton and have no idea, and that they're not bringing more to the table. And unfortunately, some of these mechs, specifically some mechs with, let's see if I can find it here. Let me edit here. Some of the mechs aren't always equal. Like, let's just say you wanted the Kit Fox and you want to up armor. I can up armor the left torso here, right? But the CT I can't. And this is one of those things where I understand that we have to hold to lore, but this is where I wish maybe PGI would have sort of broke away from some of these rules as far as like locked components, or at least, hey, maybe every mech has 1 slot Also, internal gyro and clan engine. This actually doesn't really even matter. I feel like some of these things are being displayed, and it doesn't, like, if you're on the outside, well, why does this have a fixed armor slot? Well, it's because of lore, tabletop, I should say. It's because tabletop build rules, not even lore. It has nothing to do with like when you're reading the novels or TROs or stuff like that. I do feel like if, you know, some of these mechs, you can't add armor to the CT. Okay, that being said, I actually really like the ability to add armor. I think it's absolutely fantastic. The biggest gripe I have here is that the, you know, basically the issues are, it may be confusing, and it will be confusing to potential people coming in here when they see, oh, I have a ballistic in 6 slots, or ballistic, I have 6 ballistics, until they click on it and they realize like, oh, actually you only have 1 ballistic hardpoint, but you have 6 slots, so you can take a bigger weapon. That's basically what it means. So all that being said, once you understand it, and you can move past it. The next thing with the Mech Lab is the Omnipods themselves. You can actually swap these out. And this is another thing that I feel like is sort of confusing, is that you have to unlock these Omnipods, and some are more than others. Now, if you do a mission, the very first mission, and you go back and play it via the sim pod, you could potentially hit a few of these milestones and unlock these really, really quick. And that's what I actually recommend people do, is unlock the mech Omnipods first before you go into the science lab and unlock the chassis, right? This is going to boost your Excel, DXL, top speed, and all that fun stuff. And these take XP. You can see it's going to exponentially increase as well. Hold off on doing that. Get these milestones, right? And then unlock the Omnipods. Highly recommend that. That's something, again, this sort of, the game lets you choose. And I feel like because of, you know, the progression of the game where, you know, mission, you may find yourself like, oh crap, I wanted a different, you know, torso. And you can sort of see here, here's a right torso. They're all relatively the same, except for the S that adds jump jets and a machine gun or ballistic hardpoint. But there are clear winners when it comes to certain Omnipods. If you want to do a dual SRM6 or 4 build or streak or something like that, you should unlock these first. That's what I was sort of saying, is unlock the Omnipods first, and then go unlock the, you know, basically the chassis upgrades. Okay, so overall, I actually like the additional armor. I do feel like there's a little redundancy here. I do feel like there should be an armor slot or something. You know, I sort of harken back to Mech 4, moving away from the tabletop build rules. I feel like this is a semi-quasi, it's MechWarrior Online and Mercs together, and I just think it's a little bit confusing why some mechs would have a free slot. And again, what you can do is you can unlock, you can basically go here, but none of this matters on some of these mechs. It's all just sort of fixed. So even if you wanted to make that CT a little bit stronger, where you could use this mech maybe a little bit further along in the campaign, it's going to make it difficult. So that's my thoughts on the mech bay in general. I think there's some improvements. I think it's a lot of information for someone that's coming in. And really, you got to think of people playing this on the console and, or, you know, let's just say Game Pass. They see it on Game Pass, and they may be playing undertunned, underutilized. And yeah, so I feel like there's some improvements here. Let's go and talk about the Science Lab. This is new to clans, but it's not necessarily new to Mech 5. So Mech 5 Mercs sort of had this system. It was named different. It was basically like quirks. Basically, you have research here. As you earn, you know, research points based on mech components. So you're salvage, right? You play a mission, you kill a few mechs, you're gonna get salvage, and at the end you can balance how much salvage you want, versus you can also invest in upgrading your science and requisition. Now, I actually like this. The difference being here is this is a blanket wide system. What does that mean? In the previous, in Mech 5 Mercs, this was per mech, right? You had to upgrade per mech. This is, hey, when I research, let's just say ER laser cooldown, level 1, it's now applied to every single mech, every single weapon, every single use. I don't have to go on a per mech basis. This is just a blanket upgrade to the system. Okay, I actually really like that. Every upgrade here has 3 levels. Okay, so once you do level 1, level 2, and level 3, they exponentially increase as well. I actually like this system. There are, I pointed out in my review, little snippet I did for PGI, there are some ones that you're gonna wanna pay attention. And I feel like, again, if you didn't know, even me being an experienced player, I didn't know these were even on here, structured damage reduction. I think what would be helpful here is some type of sorting. It's funny because it says sorted by alphabetical, but then there's nothing else. This is actually one of those things where having different tabs or like armor, protection, weapons, equipment would be really helpful, because you scroll down here, it's hard to, oh, there's armor reduction. Like, it would be really nice if there was that, like, hey, equipment, weapons, ballistic, whatever, some sort of sorting here. It's just sort of hard to find them at certain points in time, especially if you don't have enough components. Like right now, I don't have enough to do anything. And so sometimes it's like, okay, I need to save up 50 equipment and 400 mech. Keep that in mind when you're done with the mission and you're going to select how much salvage. If you want to knock this out really quick, downgrade the, the weapon and get enough of what you need to. And then once you start researching, you'll see it on active. Now, keep in mind, one of the things that you're going to also want to do with your rec point or your honor points here is upgrade salvage operations. This is how much you're actually getting per. And then you could also upgrade your how good your scientists are, and then how many scientists there are. You will max this out in the campaign playthrough. I would highly recommend doing how much you're getting per mission, then how good your scientists are, and then how many scientists. I would probably go in that order, and then really just be careful, I say, be thoughtful of what you're going for. I would highly recommend the damage reduction and the structure right here first, and then whatever weapon systems you're really working on. If you're using PPCs a lot, go do the heat gen. Pulse laser range is huge, by the way. You can make these things ridiculous. A medium pulse going 500 plus meters is quite absurd. So that's really, I like this system. It does get to the point where you don't unlock everything, depending on your campaign playthrough. So be very careful. If you're not using active probe or ECM, if you're not using certain weapon systems, don't invest points in them. I will say you want to be utilizing, because you're producing, like I'm producing 250 research points per. If I'm not using that, it's wasted. Okay, so your very first mission, obviously you're not going to be able to do anything here. And then you can see you're completed here. But I do think some sort of sort system would be really nice here, as it was sort of annoying and confusing to try to find, needle in a haystack, because the transparency here, it's like, oh, okay, there it is, And then sometimes you'd have enough points, they'd be up here midway instead of down here. So sorting would be great. As far as this system, I like this more than I like the quirk system in Mercs. It's basically the same system, but what they've done is they simplified it. I actually like that. I don't mind it. It doesn't make any mech specifically unique, because every mech that uses those weapons or equipment gets bonuses. I think I can see the simplification there, and I think that works as well. The chassis upgrade system, this is where, again, I recommend you unlock the omnipods that you want first, and then start applying it here. Think about a few things. Think about your Excel DXL top speed. I didn't do reverse speed. That was always my last. You can get all these. They have 5 levels. Okay, so level 1 through 5. Quite significant difference in the performance of the mechs. utilize the sim pod. If you really like the Viper and you really want to just knock it out of the park early on, unlock the Omnipods. It's going to give you a lot of versatility as far as hardpoint selection. Then start knocking these out. Do the milestones. As I mentioned, these are huge. You can see how much XP here. Okay. As far as feedback on the these, I do feel like it's one of those things where it could be automated. It does give the player choice of like, oh hey, I want XL, DXL first, and then they can work their way. Instead of just be blanket upgrades as progression. I don't mind that. I do feel like this could be automated, but it's given player choice, so I'm okay with it. But there are going to be mechs that, again, if you want to skip them, I skip the gargoyle. You don't even have to do anything with it if you don't want to. But in general, this is your performance as far as how the mech handles, and you definitely want to get these things depending on what you want. Again, XL, DXL is always a big one. Your torso movement speed, being able to torso twist, and then torso angle, turn speed, all that. Reverse speed and top speed are nice, but I think the other ones definitely come into play. Chassis milestone. The only feedback I have here is that you have to scroll down. Nice thing is once you complete them, it'll have a little yellow pip, and you just click, claim, and boom, you're done. I think this could be consolidated. You've got a lot of dead space here. Probably just condense it a little bit, and I think you can fit almost all of them without a scroll wheel. But overall, I have no problem with this. If they do any type of DLCs and they add mechs and so forth, again, this is to be expected. I just feel like some of these sort of rudimentary, simple research is nice as well. Marketplace. This is where you buy a mech, you can sell a mech if you will. Here's my thoughts on this. I don't think you have to really ever sell mechs. You're gonna earn enough Kerinskis, if you will, in-game currency. You don't really have to sell anything. So I wouldn't. Every single time you do unlock a mech, by the way, you automatically get one. Okay, so just sort of keep that in mind. I just hindsight out of playing the entire campaign, you're gonna want to purchase, especially you want that all Timby star, if you will. But as far as you do get one, so just sort of keep in mind you do get a mech when you unlock them. Okay. Speaking of unlocks, you do actually have to physically go in here and unlock. Again, I do feel that's a little redundant. I think it should just unlock and you get one, but it's another tab, there. So weapons and equipment, this is where you can purchase or sell. There's really no point to this screen other than selling. You're going to do all your purchasing and everything in the mech lab. It automatically purchases it if you don't have it. I didn't really ever use this or equipment. These are all redundant. There's actually, I think these two could be reused somewhere else. But again, when you're customizing a mech and you pick a new weapon here, right, we're gonna do that. When you go to save changes, it automatically does it. And as I mentioned before, you don't really run out of, C-bills unless you're doing a lot of crazy stuff. So I don't think that's really as a concern here, going here and selling. And obviously you can see your large laser is 80,000. When you go to sell, it's only like half the price as well. Same thing with the mechs. You don't get your mechs back what they cost, right? Used bits don't matter as much as new stuff. So anyways, I think these could be reused. I don't really see a need in them. My thoughts on that. Okay, something else to talk about when it comes to the unlocking of chassis, it's actually tied into your level, right? We had just got through the main sort of introduction to the game, right? We got through the trial position, and we're about to start our campaign here on Santander. Now, as far as facilities and the marketplace and battle mechs and unlock, that's based on once we hit level 3, adder, and so forth and so on. Now here's the crux of it. Because the game is sort of designed around tabletop rules and quasi hardpoint system from, MechWarrior Online and Mercs, some mechs are clearly better than others. And unfortunately, on my playthrough, One of those just so happens to start off pretty much right off the bat, which is like the summoner that you unlock at level 9. I think each mech should either come out at different rates here, different times. Like this shouldn't be a level 9. This should be like early on, right? Because the issue with them following the tabletop build rules is that the summoner is clearly inferior to the Timmy. And actually, I would go on a limb and say it's actually inferior to the Stormcrow. Well, why is that? Because the Stormcrow has an amazing amount of pod space for weapon systems, whereas the summoner does not. This is one of those things I wish maybe they would have broke and sort of go towards more of like Mech 4. And behind the scenes, behind, you know, the face of it, they don't really worry about Indo and Pharaoh as far as a weight savings. I wish it would have been like, oh, hey, just FYI, Pharaoh gives you more armor points and Standard doesn't. And then just be like, hey, this mech just has X amount of pod space. But because of that, the Summoner is a mech that I didn't really use at all. And then same thing with the Gargoyle. Now, the Gargoyle has the benefit is once you unlock the Omnipods, it actually has a bunch of energy Omnipods that you can do some pretty nice builds with. But in general, that's the problem with the tabletop system not really being updated, and some mechs are just become inferior. The Hellbringer is a pretty good mech, but the problem is the Hellbringer is also supposed to be mass produced for very cheap, right? Which basically means it doesn't have Indo and Pharaoh, and so again, ergo, you're better off just bringing the Stormcrow than the Hellbringer, because you can up armor the Stormcrow, throw in dual peep with a bunch of ER smalls, and the Hellbringer is never going to have as much armor. It may be 10 tons heavier, but it's just not going to be as versatile as the Stormcrow. So it's one of those things where maybe the better idea is, instead of having unlock based on your unlock, is you get to choose when you want to unlock. Now, I get it. Someone would be like, well, Direwolf, you just unlock that really quick. Well, maybe not. Maybe you actually have to have a lot of honor points to unlock one of these. And maybe that's where they tie it into the honor as well, is that this is, you get to choose. If I could get a Timmy early on, why is that a bad thing? Because I invested all my stuff in here instead of maybe other stuff. So anyways, just tossing that out there. It's one of those things where tabletop build rules are meant for tabletop in a 3D game, especially where tonnage matters, let alone hard points, but tonnage, that's the biggest drawback to some of these, let alone hard points as well. And that's a negative. So this was, I get where they were trying to go, but some of these mechs that you want maybe earlier on, because they're your favorite, it takes you forever to get to. And for me, I don't think all are equal. The Summoner should not be right below the Timberwolf. The Summoner is not a better mech than the Stormcrow, and the Hellbringer is not a better mech than the Stormcrow. So it's just one of those where I don't know what the answer is on that, whether you tie it into you let me unlock, or you rearrange these based on maybe a better understanding, or there's a ability to unlock, like the Summoner should be upwards of level 3, maybe, and that's an option for you as well. But anyways, editor Phil here out on the science lab and some of these chassis. I almost feel like this is thought chassis upgrades can be tied to the milestones that they just automatically unlock as well, or something like that. One thing I wanted to see in this is actually research for tactical options on the battlefield. And what does that mean? Basically, when you're fighting, I wanted to call in my own airstrikes using the minimap, the battle grid. I wanted to call in smoke screen. I wanted a smoke launcher on my mech. I wanted the ability to call in ammo crates. I wanted the ability to, and maybe what you do is you can send a friendly using the battle grid to go grab that ammo crate over there, like, because it's dropped. Repair bay option, a refit option during a mission would be really, really good. And what does that mean? It means, imagine dropping and, hey, I'm in mission, I'm a UAC 20 or something, and man, I could really use some ER larges. So mid mission, if you had this ability to go in there and everything pauses, or to do that, something like that, to me would have been really cool. And I feel like the science, some type of, maybe not even science, maybe it's tactical or strategic options And again, with Marketplace, really not, these aren't really used. Really, you're only buying mechs. I feel like there could be some upgrades here where you use your honor, and you do get to a point in the game where you're pretty much maxed out. You know, if you're doing stuff, you know, appropriately. And speaking of, you're using your honor points for unlocking research, but you're also doing it for repair, right? You can actually, you can see here 100 mech health a cycle, right? So you can upgrade your technicians. So now they're doing 110, 120, and then you can upgrade how many techs that you have. I did find myself sort of over prepped here. I really didn't take, I think the losses on the map, on the campaign, I didn't suffer until like the last like 2 missions, and I only lost like 1 mech, and that was probably more of just a tactical error on my part. But this is where you earn, you use these points, right? 85 to upgrade, you have total 400. I feel like if there was some type of tactical options, that would have been really, really, really sweet. So maybe not obviously for the initial clans, but maybe down the line, that DLC, being able to call in a turret, repair, refit station, tanks, you know, something, other mechs. Like maybe you can call in an additional mech because you've upgraded your research, and so instead of a star. So there's that. Also, a big letdown I have with this is elementals. It's talked about on the very first mission, Santander. It talks elementals. You see them in the cutscenes. This would be a really cool tactical option where, you know, maybe you can call in a little star of elementals and they'll come in and mess something up and then leave or something, like a consumable. I don't know, maybe not a consumable, but like it's too free to play stuff for me. But some tactical options would really be nice. I just sort of felt that was lacking on the missions. It's pretty much the missions are, you know, go blow stuff up. You don't really have too much time missions. There's a few handful where you've got plenty of time to complete it. But in general, I feel like some tactical options would be really, really nice. So that's just me. But I definitely feel like there could be some love given here. All right, let's talk about something that ties into this, and that's barracks and your mech warriors. Okay, so each mech warrior comes with a set of skills. Okay, there's 6 here. Every pilot is different. Everybody has a slightly different skills. Each one has a max of level 5. You then also get mech affinities. Mech affinities, not all mech warriors have the same affinities, by the way. What does that mean? Naomi here may not have a assault level affinity. She may not have, she'll have a heavy affinity, but not a Timberwolf. So you don't really know until that comes to unlocking. You also don't know when that happens. That's another thing. You have 30 total skills. What are my thoughts on the skills here? First off, one of the things that strikes me about this is you actually can't choose your skills here. I do feel like that's a little bit of a missed opportunity. That would be really cool where I get to choose. That actually gives me, and this system, by the way, sort of harkens to Mech Commander 2. Mech Commander 2, you actually got to pick like, hey, you're a light mech specialist. Hey, you want to do light autocannons or just a general ballistic stuff. So like, it would be like the cooldown gives you a 5%, but maybe you specialize on using that LB10 or UAC 5, and instead of 5%, it gives you 7.5%, and then scales upward. Okay. Some things to note about this that are not explained in the game is how important this skill is right here. This is also the same sort of skill in Mech 5 Mercs. That's so important. Evasion, 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 evasion. Get this knocked out. It's a grind. But this is one of the biggest things, 75% evasion here. Now, what's not explained, and again, this would be really, really nice in some type of tutorial in the training, by the way, and it can easily be set up. Evasion works on, it says increased chance of evading enemy attacks. This is if you're moving perpendicular to the target. If you're running right at the target or you're backing away from the target, this does not apply, okay? So this is, you know, going at an angle, going left to right of your target and engaging. That's why when you're engaging mechs, try to, you know, strafe left and right. Try not to stand still. This does not apply if you're standing still. There's stuff behind the scenes as far as AI and shooting and missing and so forth. So this, getting this up to 75% is is so important. And as you can see here, 20,000 XP. Can you get this on all of your MechWarriors? Yes, you can. I didn't know about this right off the bat, so I didn't prioritize it. The other thing, like I said, is because you can't pick and choose, you know, I tended to try to utilize what they have on them, but really what I wanted is me to be able to choose. You also have melee on here. Look, man, melee is, clanners definitely can do melee, but it's dishonorable to them. It's not something they actively think. They look down on it. And so for me, every single pilot, you know, MechWarrior has it, and I do feel like I really wish they would have let the player choose here, and melee wouldn't be a part. Now, why is melee there? It's because it's a leftover from mercs, and what I mean by that is the foundation of the game, mercs having punchy and mechs and, you know, like fisticuffs, is a leftover of that game. So I understand it's there. Me, what I would prefer is just that not even being an option. Get rid of it. Give them good melee skills behind, because they're trained as professionals their entire life. They know how to do that, and replace it with something else. And to me, that goes, at least to me. The other big thing is like handling, increased turn speed. You already have this, you know, in the science lab, in the chassis upgrade, turn speed, right? So again, this is sort of doubling up on stuff that I feel like, you know, it could be improved here. I would like me to choose. The other big thing is some of these things like electronic warfare. Here's the thing, spoiler alert, some of your pilots aren't always going to be here. And me not being able to choose, oh, I want Naomi also to have ECM and missiles or bonuses, you know, that's a big, I wish that was the case. Some suggestion here, I would love the ability to be able to respec. Look, this is my playthrough, my game. I should be able to respec, or have the option to go in and respec in the training missions. Some type of respec thing where, hey, you have to, you know, learn that skill. You have to be proficient in, you know, you have to put in the time. I'm okay with that as well. That would give me as a player options to where I want to respec this melee to something else, or I want to, you know, instead of energy range, I want to do pulse laser range or something like that. That would be good options. But overall, I feel like, again, the biggest thing is Simpod, just people not knowing about it. I'd love to see more training scenarios and missions here. I do like the campaign missions that you can play through, and there's challenges. Advanced parameters is technically what they're called. I like that. That's cool. It helps you unlock those milestones for mechs. I like that. More here. And then I would love to be able to choose here. I feel like, again, I don't think it really changes anything either. As far as performance, if anything, that would help you and give, you could really specialize. I didn't feel like that was necessarily the case with being hard locked here. Also, with how important evasion is, you can see disproportionate here. It's almost double. It is double. I think those should be sort of reworked, the percentages there. But yeah. Okay, so that's pretty much it for the barracks and the mission. Let me go ahead and just sort of give you a, you know, as we wrap up this sort of review, the gameplay, if you're wondering what the gameplay is like, is a lot like MechWarrior 5 Mercs. And what I mean by that is the mech combat. The missions are handcrafted, if you will, but generally it's not free flowing. You can't tactically choose like, oh, instead of coming through this valley, I want to go around and come in from the north or south. You have mission parameters and mission, you know, you'll be out of bounds. Now there are some missions that are pretty wide open and you could go down the middle if you want, but tactically that's not as, you know, I wouldn't recommend that. As far as your AI and your lance mates are concerned, I did see improvements versus Mercs. I know that people had thoughts on that, but for me at least, I noticed a difference. I also tended to fit out a lot of my AI counterparts with longer range weapons, and I wouldn't necessarily tell them to attack my target unless I absolutely needed to focus something down. They'll automatically start engaging stuff at range, and with the weapon upgrades that you can do, some of these weapon systems can reach out. That being said, because I didn't know what I was getting into most of the time with most of the missions, you tend to, you hyper focus like on, medium pulse or ERPs. You try to, you can't bracket build as much. I think that was some of that was fixed with the missile buffs as far as ammo. But during a mission, if you could call down and refit, I think that would be really nice. In general, I didn't find the game too difficult. There were some things that I didn't necessarily like in Mercs. The respawning of enemies behind you. You don't necessarily have that in this game. That's a nice thing. They've improved that. You don't have just, a wall of mechs just right behind you where you just were. That being said, they do have these hangars that mechs spawn out of, and keep that in mind. If you see one and you're approaching, there's gonna be a mech that comes out of that. So if you run past it and then it triggers something, you'll have a mech spawn right there. I don't necessarily like that, but that's just sort of keep in mind. Let's see, talking about the missions in general, I didn't find them too difficult. I found that the lack of information, the lack of ammo at certain times, which again was fixed, not knowing if you are gonna be able to get repairs, stuff like that. Keep in mind the AI is going to focus on some of the most, like, if you're not engaging anything, they tend to not really mess with you as much. So watch your friendlies. If one of them's taking too much damage, take your battle grid, send them the back. The difficult thing is there, you can't just do like an all command to just like, anyways, you got to micromanage that. Speaking of micromanaging in the battle grid, to me, I actually found that I wanted things to slow down. I wish there was a slow-mo feature when the battle grid was up, or that it paused the game. I know the difficulties with that is if you're playing co-op, that may not be possible. But if I'm dropping solo just AI lance mates, the action is happening so quick. If I take my eyes off the battlefield, if I'm not in a position to be able to do so, I'm going to be taking damage. And I just wish it had slow-mo. At least for me, or something along those lines. That being said, there was a few missions that had triggers that there would be a animated sequence, and all of a sudden your tactics of like having distance were taken away. There's obviously a Luthien battle where you're assaulting. If you set up 600, 700 meters, but then all of a sudden there's an animated sequence and they're right on top of you. I did feel like that was really frustrating. As well as there's a VTOL mission where you can set up, but it doesn't matter because, it's just boom, they're right on top of you. So those are things that sort of like goes back to the, it takes away any tactical, strategic thing that you were trying to accomplish from your sort of hands there. As far as the missions and the overall arching story of the game, I thought it was fantastic as far as your characters, and you really get introduced to the BattleTech universe, and I don't think you've ever really seen. Like I said, Perez was one of my favorite characters. Love him, hate him, but in general, I think it was really well done on PGI's part. The writing and planning and stuff like that. I just wish there was a little bit more tactical options when it comes to the missions here, and that you can sort of have choice in that. Now, as far as there was some critique of some of the characters and animations. I think they're cleaning all that up. I think with the hot fixes, they've cleaned up a lot of stuff. There was some issues I had on a few missions where you would complete an objective and dialogue would be happening still, even though said pilot or said thing was already done. We ran into that with Mercs. That could just be a, hey, Phil, don't kill them as quickly. But stuff like that triggers. But yeah, overall, I think my experience was fantastic. If you're wanting a game that is story-driven, heavily story-driven and narration, this is it for you. Some people would call that a drawback. There wasn't really choice in here. You're going to do X amount of missions and it moves on, right? Every mission is you're going to have some dialogue and narration. I'm okay with that. I thought it was well executed. This is not Mercs. This is not spoiler alert. When you're done with this, you're done. You can basically go back. You can do the missions here and replay, and that's it. That's all you're going to do. And this is where, again, I think if you had more training simulations and different things, that could maybe extend some, gameplay. You and your friends want to just hop in here and do a horde mode or whatever type of mission. Speaking of missions, there wasn't as much choice. You do one mission where you're trying to be sneaky in like light mechs, and then that's it. You never do that again. And I felt like that was a missed opportunity where it was hyper focused on once and then never really seen again. I think the types of missions could be varied up, throughout. I think some of those things could, of course, be improved. But overall, it's going to be a lot like Mercs as far as mech combat. The one thing I will say that is sort of a critique that I felt the entire time playing is I never felt like I was a part of a big grandiose battle in the missions themselves. Okay, there were some missions, especially with Luthien, where you've got these wide open spaces, and I never felt the vibe of just, holy crap, this is an invasion, this is a big thing happening. And I think there's a few reasons for it. There is no infantry, there's no elementals battle armor, there's no huge variation of vehicles, armored personnel carriers, nothing. There's only a handful of tanks. I really wish that would have been expanded. The lack of atmospheric stuff, night missions, there's no thermal, there's a lot of things that there's no artillery, the artillery things, you see them, but just aerospace strafing and just freaking dropping inferno across the ground. Instead, aerospace slow down and they're cruise. To me, it's just one of those things where I really wanted to feel like a battle, like there was a battlefield going on, and even if I never felt like there was a bigger part of an invasion where hey, an entire dropship lands, unloads, and they move off the plane area. You never really quite grasp that. And again, because the lack of I think assets, where engaging with the player, the sense of scale, right? It was always just mechs, a few vehicles, and then also with the gameplay is as you progress, everything turns into elite, which basically, you're gonna have to min-max, you're gonna have to up armor, you're gonna have to take bigger mechs. I don't know if you could play this entire playthrough with just lights and mediums. I don't know. That's something to challenge maybe, but I don't think so. And that's I feel like, again, it sort of follows that power dynamic of bigger and bigger, and you want to concentrate fire on the CT of an enemy and just take it out as quickly as possible. And that sort of loses a little bit for me as far as the overall experience. I wanted to not necessarily run stock builds, if you will, but a stock build should be, awesome. It should be badass, should be terrifying. But there's some weapons, machine guns. Well, machine guns are on mechs mainly for vehicles, light armored vehicles and infantry. Same thing with flamers and stuff like that. But I just felt there was an overall, especially on Luthien, when you're entering the, palace area and you're entering it's just, it didn't seem like there was this big evolution going on and this big combat going on. And I just felt that was missing. So as far as the overall vibe of that, you definitely get the vibe of your mechs hit hard and they take things out very quickly. Clan tech is definitely OP, especially when you get those upgrades. I mentioned before, you can have pulse lasers that are hitting 600 meters out, medium pulse, and you're just coring things out. But I do feel that I just never really got a sense of an overall big picture happening. And going back to those elementals, you hear about them. Someone who doesn't know BattleTech has no idea what you're talking about. It's referenced. You see them at the very beginning. You're like, oh, what is that thing walking by in the bay? But you never see them. They're talked about in the first mission. I felt like it was really sort of a missed opportunity, and I wish there was a codex for people to reference, or maybe again, maybe this is where barracks and Simpods, there's some missions with elementals and stuff like that. But yeah, overall, I had a great experience with this game. You know, I don't tell people to go buy games. I show you what my experience is. And if you like what you see, go get it. If you wanted a Merc style experience, this is not going to be the game for you. This is not a build it up and then explore the inner sphere. This is not for you. This is not a sandbox game. This is literally a linear storyline where you're going to get introduced to these characters. You're going to know some of them. And then you get to hear their experiences inside the game as well. And then obviously the storyline sort of narrative sequences outside. But overall, I had a fantastic time with this. As far as them moving forward, I've already sort of talked about the things I'd like to see improved. I don't think you're going to see drastic changes, but I definitely think there should be some improvements to some of this. And if anything, it just adds a little bit more towards the overall game. Again, the really cool thing is you can almost watch this as a movie, and maybe throw in some mission combat in between. And I think it's been outstanding from that perspective. I think if you took that level of fidelity and sort of delivered them into the missions as well, that sort of better sort of tactical and strategic is we're assaulting this planet. Strategic is we have these pirates here, right? We need to remove. The tactical aspect is, hey, we're doing this mission now. What is the tactical options? And you don't really have it. It's you're a hammer, there's a nail, go smash. And I want more tactical options here. As I mentioned before, if I wanted to drop maybe under tonnaged, do I get more rewards for that? And but yeah, guys, I think that's pretty much it. Again, I hope you enjoyed this review. Let me know in the description, in the comments, what did you want to see improved? What was your experience? Did you enjoy it as much as I did? I said this before, and I'll say it again. All I wanted was a story-driven MechWarrior experience, and I got that. I didn't expect this to be quite as like drastic of a change from Mercs, and it wasn't. The gameplay is relatively just like Mercs as far as when you're on mission. Obviously with mechs and clan tech and stuff like that. But seeing the clanner's perspective, which I feel like is always villainized and sort of alien, and I grew up reading the novels, I thought it was great to see. It was spot on. So let me know in the description, in the comments, specifically, what do you want to see in the future DLCs? Do you think they should stick to the Smoke Jaguars, knowing what happens to the Smoke Jaguars? Would you go to a different clan? Would you replay the invasion through a different clan, or would you want to see some like backworld stuff where maybe they're fighting, maybe you go and play in Wolf and you're fighting Jade Falcons on this planet and then fighting the Ghost Bears over here, and then, oh crap, you're gonna have to fight the Lyrans on this border contested world. Let me know down in the comments, what did you like to see? What was your favorite thing about this? For me, honestly, spoiler alert, one of the best lines in this game was when you choose to join the Wolf Dragoons and you're going up against Perez, and you call him out for being a war criminal, basically. And he's like, what are you talking about? You could have stepped up and stopped me at any point in time, but you didn't, right? When you talk about honor, you're, coward. I love that scene. I definitely felt that Jaden, it was more fitting to go the clan ending and not the Wolf Dragoons ending. To me, that sort of felt not forced, but I just, the way between the characters and your Sibkin, I felt you would have stuck to being a Jaguar. I really felt that was more, poignant as far as the character and the development. But that one line was fantastic because it reminds me of a BattleTech story with Phelan Kell. Phelan Kell, before he was actually Phelan Kell, Phelan is walking around one of the planets with Ulrich Karinsky, the Khan, and at this time Ilkhan, and he sees Vlad beating the crap out of this civilian, and he's like, hey, are you going to stop it? And Ulrich says, no. I mean, are you? And goes and stops him. And it's one of those things where it's like, to me, that's sort of the exchange is like, you're calling him, at least Perez, you know where he stands. You may not like it, you may not agree with it, but that's him. And, yeah, I just thought that that line was fantastic. So for me, that was the narrative team, fantastic job. The writing team, fantastic job. I liked everything about those interactions and really seeing, you know, the game. And before my closing here, whatever they decide on doing, you know, moving forward, whether it's Smoke Jaguars or different clans or whatever, I want to see more. And I think a lot of you out there as well really enjoyed this. And it's awesome to see MechWarrior BattleTech, if you will, in this story mode, if you will, that we've never seen before. We read about it, and for me, I really want, you know, I want to put down that novel, step into the game, and I feel like I'm in that universe. And this is the first time where you get to see that from a cinematic standpoint, and I think that's fantastic. I think, you know, it'd be awesome to see this sort of from the mission standpoint, a little bit more fidelity, just like that when you're on ground doing that. But yeah, I look forward to seeing what they do. I suspect there's going to be multiple DLCs, just like Mercs. Speaking of Mercs, they did say there was another DLC that was being worked on, but it was put on like hold. So there potentially might be more Mercs stuff in the future as well. I don't know if they'll do a tie-in there. I have no idea. That being said, I know a lot of Mercs fans would love to see the battle grid, albeit I think Vaughn Biomes has done their own. So kudos to you, Vaughn. Yeah, I look forward to that. Overall, great experience. There's some things that I think can be cleaned up and improved, especially for your new players coming in. But from a BattleTech fan standpoint, I like this. I really enjoyed this. Yeah, I look forward to seeing, you know, what they do in the future. And I'm going to also leave this out there. I look forward to seeing what mods do. They did say there would be mod tools, just like Mercs, though. It takes a while before that comes out. Even with mods, though, I think what's going to be interesting is a certain developer in Twitch chat has basically, you know, stated that, like, hey, the tools in UE5 that they've created for story and narration are greatly improved on a individual basis for missions versus Mercs, which utilize the procedural generation system that really sort of, you know, there was an article, you know, the PC Gamer article with Paul that sort of said they were hamstrung on doing that. So I look forward to seeing what mods do. No word yet on that. But yeah, guys, this was my review of Mech 5 Clans. I hope you took something out of this. I don't know if you agreed with me, disagreed. Again, let me know down in the comments if you did. Maybe you wanted something different. Maybe you thought differently on a particular thing. Of course, I didn't go over every single mission. I only went over the beginning sequences where I sort of set the motion as far as the cinematics. But overall, I enjoyed this. I look forward to seeing more DLC, and I will cover any news and information as that comes. So I hope you enjoyed this. If you did, click the follow button. Make sure to join us on Discord. Information's in the description. And join me over on Twitch. Again, I stream Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. through 4 p.m. unless otherwise I let you guys know on Discord ahead of time. If you guys want to support, again, just click that like button and comment. I hope to see you on the streams. I'll see you on the next video. Until next time. No Guts, No Galaxy hats are now available at nogutsnogalaxy.net. Get yours today.